So today I'm in kind of a special space here at the V8 Speed and Resto shop. This is our parts warehouse, which is also known as the lumber yard, and we'll get into that in a minute. And I'm joined by a very valued member of the V8 team, Mr. Jason Beebe, who's also known as Sarge. Sarge, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Sarge has been a member of our team for a long time and has had quite a bit to do with this facility, but also is a car guy with some pretty cool cars in the garage and an interesting story. So before we get into the car stuff and the story of your Chevelle, why don't you take us through your previous life and what you did then that kind of helped put this together?
Growing up, we had project cars every year with Dad. So that got us into the car thing. Camaros, Chevelles, and you name it. But Dad was also served in the military, so that kind of brought that into the picture as well. And I joined the military at the Air Force at age 20, and for 22 years was a C-130 Loadmaster. And so whenever it comes to logistics and organization, it's just been, like I said, an amazing opportunity for me.
And when you retired out of the military, you discovered us because Kelly was working a job fair.
Yes, after 22 years of all your time committed, loved every minute of it. Whenever you retire from that, there's just a giant vacuum. Just trying to figure out what to do and what you want to do, and so just kind of experimenting with this and that. And Kelly was just talking about the opportunities that they had here at V8, and I really couldn't do mechanic, paint, fabricate, any of those, but at the very bottom of the list was shop assistant. And I was like, hey, the opportunity sounds pretty neat, but I just wasn't for sure. And I started walking out of the job fair, and I was like, no, let's go back and ask the question. She said, yeah, just walk in the front door and ask for a guy named Kevin. And so it all started from there.
So I find this story fascinating because the responsibilities of a loadmaster are to take a whole bunch of stuff and people and get it on an aircraft and fly it somewhere else and get it all off the aircraft and the people off and everything sound and safe.
Yes, sir.
Essentially.
Yes, sir.
And you've done this all over the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But you didn't really reveal a lot of your skills when you first showed up. You're like, where's the broom? Where's the garbage? I'm gone.
Yes, sir.
And you did a tremendous job of all that stuff. And pretty soon, Kelly and I, this is, again, 11 years ago, we were kind of learning the ropes of running a business and this whole place real time. And these questions were coming up, like, how do we deal with these people and these certain situations? And you would, kind of overhear this stuff. And you wouldn't volunteer information unless we asked, but we didn't really know to ask because we didn't know that you had experience managing. How many people did you have at one point?
160.
100. Yeah, we're struggling with a handful of technicians, and you had at one point a responsibility of 160 people. So I remember you kind of saying, if I may, and offering some stuff, and Kelly and I are like, who is this guy? This is fantastic. And we were having a lot of struggles with losing parts. When you got a lot of cars that you're building, especially a bunch of Camaros, right? A whole slew of 69 Camaros. We were getting parts that were being cross-pollinated from one car to another, things that didn't necessarily find their way home to storage and whatnot. And I'll never forget your words. You were like, well, let's just let this place kind of talk to us and see what it needs. And you kind of took it from there.
Yes, sir.
The reason why we call this the lumber yard is this building is part of a larger structure that was literally a lumber yard. And it is right across the street from our shop. And we were able to purchase this property, and we leveled the actual lumber yard place because it was falling in on itself. But the good part of the structure we were able to keep. And you and your team turned this into our warehouse, which every time I come in here, I'm just amazed. I mean, it's a remarkable place to store parts and organize.
Well, our ultimate goal is workspace, storage space, because I'm sure that we've all had those frustrations where whenever you come in, you have to clean out an area before you can ever start doing your job. So we created, with the lumberyard, I think the greatest accomplishment that we've had is creating a parts on demand type program. to where everything can stay in its place on a shelf until the technicians need it to install it, to keep their areas clear. But also with that is storage for parts that are coming off of the car that are either going to be recycled at a later time or the owner is going to want to take home with them. That's how we always saw our best way to help out the shop. Organization leading into just basically space to be able to work on a car.
It's such a huge thing because you nailed that frustration. I mean, I tell people, if you have a weekend project you're going to do at home on the weekend, you got to start on Monday clearing out that space and getting your stuff so that when Saturday comes, you can actually do the work and not burn your day driving to the parts store and cleaning everything off. So that's been huge. I think our lost parts are like down to next to nothing.
We'd last count a couple a year.
A couple a year, yeah, and it was like a couple a minute, you know, in before you got here. So the other thing that we've developed is software communication to where the technicians at their station, if it's a mechanic or a fabricator or the upholstery guy, whatever, they can send in a digital request that's tied to the particular car customer, and then you get the alert, you and Thomas and Phil pull the parts, put together an efficient delivery package and deliver them on demand to wherever they need to go. And that's also the opportunity to say, hey, is there anything that needs to go back? And those parts return to here, and we maintain a database of spreadsheets for each car that tracks the location.
Yes, sir.
You know, we wouldn't have dreamed of this before you got here. Just, you know, and it was a team effort to put it together. But
absolutely.
Just to do it.
I guess you could say a career progression type thing. To me, it's just the progression of the love of a car.
So, you know, growing up a car guy in a family with your dad and your brother, there's some significant cars in your life, and you've driven your Chevelle here many times, which has a pretty cool story behind it. You've had that car forever.
Yes, I was 14. I was down in the basement putting together one of those monogrammed Chevelle, 1970 Chevelle models, and it was just a random thing that I had picked up at the local hobby store. Dad came home from work and he was just looking at it. He was like, "Would you want one of those?" I was like, "Well, I already have one." And he was like, "No, would you want one for real?" And I was like, "Hey, that sounds pretty cool." So that kind of started a 2-year quest of a 14-year-old kid. Dad was a postman, and he walked 13 miles a day, and that's a lot of people that you can talk to and get leads on a vehicle. You know, well before the internet and eBay and all of that, where you could go online and you could figure out exactly where something is and go get it. So it was just those times whenever it was just the luck of the find and being in the right place at the right time. And Dad, on one of his days, he got a lead where there was a 70 Chevelle sitting next to an old shed, and we went and we talked to the gentleman. Dad was like, "Okay, so how much for the car as it is?" And the gentleman told him, "I just finished building this motor and I can get it up to 90 miles an hour in first gear." And he looked at me as like, "We don't need that." So he struck a deal with the gentleman that he didn't want the engine and transmission, he would just like the shell. And so, you know, a week later, we brought it home. My brother has a 71 Camaro RSSS that we were finishing up, and then as soon as that one was done, we started on the Chevelle. So it took 2 years to find, and then a year to restore.
Well, I think that's an interesting way to curb the temptation to go, drive the thing as a 14-year-old if it doesn't have an engine.
Right.
But eventually, it certainly got one.
Yes, we found a '67 Caprice station wagon that had a 396 and a turbo 400 in it. So that became the drivetrain. Now,
what color was that originally?
It's a cranberry red with black stripes and a black vinyl top.
And that's what it is now, without the top.
Without the vinyl top.
Well, at one point, we had a Camaro in the shop, a 72.
73.
Or 73, the red one. And there was a connection between you and that car, too. What was that all about?
My uncle, he's had his '73 Camaro for decades, and it had been sitting in the barn, and he just wanted to get it back out on the road to take his grandkids for a ride. So he asked if he could bring it over to the shop, and the connection with that is Dad bought that car as an insurance wreck back in the mid '70s, and that was actually the car that inspired me, if you will, to become part of this world. So it's just pretty interesting that that he bought it and at 5 years old, you know, that was the inspiration to get into this world. And then like decades later, that car is coming into the shop. Even though it was back in the mid '70s, whenever he built the car, he could still tell you every detail about that car. And it was the it was a '73 Z28, so low number car, and it was also a numbers matching car too.
The kind of the culmination of all this, like you mentioned before, you know, you've been with us for a while, but interestingly, we're coming to the end of this flight, and
Yes.
and you're going to take an opportunity to move on, to be able to spend more time with your family and
Absolutely.
drive the Chevelle. But we appreciate everything that you've done here to help us get this program going and mentor, you know, Thomas and Phil and Kaylee and Spartan and all the people to help get this off the ground. And I want to extend our deepest thanks, because you're welcome to come back anytime you want and hang out. And thank you for all you've done,
Absolutely.
both militarily and in the V8 service.
Oh yes, sir. What I'm proud of is start here as a shop assistant, sweeping floors, and now I have the opportunity to share the lumberyard. I mean, it's not only a place for me to come to work, but it's home.
Look at that guy, so intense.
I'm trying to find seatbelts.
This one too.
It's shared stories and shared experiences with good friends Phil and Thomas and John Spartan.
Well, Jason is, again, a tremendous value to what we've done here, and part of the car culture fabric that a lot of people don't understand, and it runs deeper than just turning wrenches or whatever. He put a sign up in here that says, you know, live a million lifetimes in your one, and I think you've lived probably 250,000 of those or so in here.
Oh, I enjoyed every minute of it too.
Well, we thank you,
Yes, sir.
and best of luck with everything, and I know
you,
we're
sir.
going to see you again.
Absolutely.